So here's a story I think is really important. Hasn't got that much coverage, but I have seen people talking about it. It's a more localized case. It's from California, which is where I am currently. I personally remember there being a lot of hoopla about this, and of course, we're talking about Prop 22, which was a ballot measure here in California, and it had to do with gig economy workers, essentially Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, DoorDash drivers, all those convenient little apps we use, deliver our food, get rides, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a huge, massive ad campaign late last year, I believe it was, as this ballot measure was coming to the forefront. And so let's watch one of the ads that were blasted out in here in California. Let's watch and see how this ad portrays this ballot measure, what it tells you to do, and kind of the feel you get from it after watching it.
Lyft started as a new way to earn a little extra, open and available to people from all walks of life. That flexibility gives drivers the independence other jobs can't offer. Prop 22 will give them that and more. They'll get guaranteed earnings, healthcare benefits, personal protections, and they can maintain their flexible schedules. But if drivers are forced to become employees, up to 90% of app-based driving jobs could disappear, and the jobs that are left wouldn't have the flexibility they need. There would be set shifts, flat wages, and limits on when and where they could drive. That's why the vast majority of drivers, by a 4-to-1 margin, want to maintain their independence. Protecting their flexibility and providing historic new benefits are what we're fighting for. Vote yes on Prop 22 to help create a better path forward for drivers.
Okay, so that is what was all over the airwaves out here in California. It was very confusing. There were some ads that were vote no on Prop 22, but majority of the ads were vote yes. They looked like that. And so, Uber and Lyft had over $200 million ad campaign to push the passage of Prop 22, to push a yes vote on this proposition. Now, let's look at what Prop 22 actually does. You see here, I'm sorry, I cannot exactly remember where I got this from, but it was from Twitter. And it says, how does Prop 22 affect app-based workers? The passage of Prop 22 creates a new category of worker, part-time, full-time, which, has always been there, and now gig worker. Gig work versus traditional work. Unlike traditional workers, gig workers are barred from state unemployment insurance, a guaranteed state minimum wage, and general worker protections like overtime pay, sick leave, workplace discrimination protection, and the right to collectively bargain. So they essentially just strip them of, all the protections that we give to, traditional workers. So this is obviously not something that they were putting out there. They were putting out there that it was going to increase your flexibility, it was going to increase your benefits, like all these positive things that, the consumer taking in this information, if they were not properly prepared or, researched or informed on Prop 22, they would have taken that and been like, oh, wow, this is a really good thing for these Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, all the, DoorDash delivery drivers. So I'm going to vote yes on this. But this is what Prop 22 actually did. So the Instacart, it was also involved, uses gig economy drivers or, gig delivery drivers as well as Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Postmates, all these companies. And they spent more than $220 million to persuade voters to pass Prop 22, saying their businesses depended on the flexibility of not having employees. Okay, first off, right there, if your business depends on not giving workers, the protections that have been afforded to workers and fought for by unions and other organizations for decades, then you don't deserve to be a company, guys. It's the same thing with the minimum wage. If you have to pay your workers sub minimum wage, sub livable wage, if your workers have to go home and use government subsidies just to survive because you're paying them not enough for them to survive off that wage, you don't deserve to be a business. I'm sorry. It's just how it is. And of course, when it comes to the minimum wage, I think there should be some subsidies for the government, for those businesses, small businesses particularly, who can't afford for all their workers to have a $15 minimum wage. But what do you think is going to be more inexpensive? Giving those subsidies to those certain amount of small businesses that could use that help, or subsidizing millions and millions and millions of people who need help because they can't live off of the minimum wage that they're being given. Now, that's another subject, but it's along the same line as what these gig companies are arguing. Oh, well, we can't have our drivers actually be real workers with real protections. Otherwise, our business model doesn't work. Well, now they're exposing themselves, because this is exactly what their business model was. It's that they were going to come in, undercut, taxi drivers, undercut pizza delivery drivers or the individual delivery drivers of companies, undercut all these things, take them completely out of the market. And then have y'all noticed that when Uber and Lyft first started, you was like, wow, this is super convenient and it's cheaper. It's cheaper than regular cabs. Now that's like more expensive. Like, this is what they do. And we're gonna see more of that later. But they continue saying and one of their arguments was that prices would rise if Prop 22 did not pass. Okay, so let's see what happened after Prop 22 did pass out here in California, after that $220 million ad drive. Let's see what happened. Instacart on Friday raised its prices in California because of Prop 22, a ballot measure that gave gig workers some benefits and earnings guarantees while keeping them as independent contractors rather than employees. I mean, I'd argue that a little bit. I would definitely argue that. And they also say customers will now pay an 8% service fee, up from 5%, to have Instacart gig workers buy and deliver groceries. In other words, for a $100 grocery order, customers will not pay $8. So, okay, yeah, we get that. So they were saying they weren't going to raise, if Prop 22 didn't pass, they were going to have to raise prices. And then they raised prices anyway. Guys, corporations will lie, cheat, and steal their way to making more money at every turn, unless they are regulated. Unless the government steps in and says, no, you cannot do this. Under the free market, under capitalism, this is exactly what corporations will do and have done. We're seeing it right here. It's a perfect example. We continue on. Here's what Prop 22 did in practice. Prop 22 procures a benefit package for workers that drive or deliver with the app for extended periods of time. However, these benefits average around $400 in health coverage per month. For context, the lowest amount of monthly coverage in ACA Obamacare plans are around $1,400. So that's less than a third of the benefit of the lowest amount of monthly coverage plan. The benefits you would get from that lowest coverage plan, you're getting even less, or they're getting even less with their new great benefits plan that they were pitching in those ads. They're getting less than a third of the benefits they'd be getting from just having the lowest monthly plan on the ACA. So instead, and here's where it gets you, instead of the company having them as a worker, even if they had to pay to provide them with the least and most basic healthcare coverage plan on the ACA, it would still be better than the plan they're getting right now after Prop 22. The devil is in the details. But they don't tell you those details. They don't tell you those details in those ads. Did you hear MSNBC or CNN, or I didn't even hear a lot of the local stations out here in California talking about this, talking about the details, what this would actually do to the workers for these gig. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of millions of workers. This was negatively and adversely affecting their lives right now. And I didn't hear a peep about it back then. Let's continue. Benefits are only available to workers who clock in 25 engaged hours a week, which are around 40 hours in real time. So I don't even know how they, differentiate or why 25 engaged hours, you have to take 40 hours of real time. I don't know exactly why that is, But I mean, that's just unbelievable. You have to do basically twice the amount of work, hours wise, to even qualify for that benefit. And then they continue saying, additionally, app-based companies have tacked fees to meet 120% minimum wage. Yet so they've tacked on those fees to us, the consumer, to meet that 120% minimum wage. Yet the UC Berkeley Labor Center estimates that the minimum wage for app-based work still averages out to less than $6 an hour. $6 an hour is what they're paying these workers, the people actually delivering you the food. And I don't know about y'all, but I've been noticing that these fees for these just for a simple delivery have gone up an exorbitant amount. And they've been climbing for a while, but really since Prop 22, they have done this. They've increased these fees. They've added all type of different fees. It's just unbelievable. And we let that happen in here in California. And why? Because a lot of, and this is what they do. They make sure you're working 2 or 3 jobs. You got to take care of your kids. You got to scrape by. You're working paycheck to paycheck. You're stressed. You have no time. And then they put this ballot measure up. You might see 1, 2, 3 commercials about it. They're all from Uber and Lyft. They all make it sound so great. You might have been in a tough situation yourself, especially in the middle of a pandemic. You didn't go out and research this. And then they pass this and they're screwing workers even harder. Let's Vina Duval on Twitter had a great remark, and I'm gonna read it. She said, "Reminder from me. Customers have been experiencing artificially low prices because of venture capital subsidies. We've known that service fees were going to go up because of the model is based on capturing the market and then raising fees." So this is what I was talking about earlier. They capture the market, they squeeze out all the competition, all the smaller competition, usually unionized workers. They squeeze those people completely out. This is basically the Amazon model. You squeeze them completely out of the market. All those people are fired, those businesses go under. And then once they have a complete monopoly over the market, they raise the prices. They raise all the prices to even higher than they were before, right? So at first it seemed convenient and nice and cheap. And then once they have a stranglehold of the market, they raise and raise and raise prices gradually so you don't really notice. But people are starting to notice now. And this is something that, yes, happened here in California, but this can be widespread across the country. This was a test here in California. We failed. One of the most progressive states in the union, right? We failed this test. They're going to try and push this around the nation. So if you're a delivery driver for a particular restaurant, or, a delivery driver for a grocery store or whatever, they're coming for your job. They're coming for it. And in fact, let's see, at Safeway in San Francisco, it looks like they're going to replace all their delivery workers with DoorDash drivers. But don't worry. They say it's not tied to Prop 22, even though they waited till after Prop 22 passed to do it. It's just comical at this point. Adam Conover on Twitter says, Prop 22's ad blitz claimed that it would raise driver wages. When is the last time a corporation went out of their way to do something to raise wages? Guys, their entire business model, because of the system that we've instituted here of these quarterly profits and earnings reports and the stock market, all that stuff, what they do is they look at short-term profits, okay? So they're not going to go out of their way to decrease their own short-term profits, especially not a massive Fortune 500 corporation. No. So as soon as they said that, bells should have started ringing in your head. They're lying. He continues saying, now that it passed, drivers report that wages and tips have fallen well below minimum wage before expenses. And that's another thing. They don't, if you drive out here in California, you know how the roads are. They're not out there paying for your tire repair because you went over the pothole in LA. They're not paying for that. They're not paying for the ticket you got because there's no parking in LA and you got to go up to someone's apartment and leave your car out there for 3, 4, 5 minutes and you get a ticket, they're not paying for that. So they're not paying for your gas. This is all before expenses, guys. And they're already making sub-minimum wage. And Adam continues saying, and that Uber and others are denying them the healthcare benefits they promised. Of course they're denying them. You know, they probably had something in the details, right? In the fine print that you have to jump through 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hoops just to actually qualify for these healthcare benefits. This is what they always do. And it doesn't need to be like this. In fact, in the UK, there was let's just read this tweet from James Temperton. He said, breaking, Uber has lost a landmark gig economy case in the Supreme Court. Uber drivers must now be classified as workers and receive minimum wage and holiday pay. See, I got excited at first. I was like, holy, is this the United States? Of course it's not. Of course it's not. It's the UK, you know, that bastion of progressiveness. You know, they have universal health care. They have, you know, a lot more things than we have. But they're not a place for a lot of progressive reform. And even they got it right. Their Supreme Court said, no, you can't do this to workers, especially because you're over here, overtaking a lot of people's businesses and jobs. You can't take those jobs, package them together, make them horrible non-union jobs. You can't do that. You have to give them minimum wage at least, and you have to give them holiday pay. And they have to be classified as workers and get all those worker protections that all other workers have. So these have real world consequences. These have real world consequences for real people that are out there struggling right now in the middle of a pandemic and need help. And they don't care about that. They care about their bottom line. They care about their profits. And if it means that you might go homeless because you can't pay your rent or you can't prove that, you make enough in income to actually get a new place if you got evicted, they don't care about that. In fact, let's look at a video of one of those very drivers who are feeling the negative ramifications of Prop 22.
Y'all, I wish that people who order Uber Eats or DoorDash understood what it's like to be a driver. Like, I just spent 45 minutes on a delivery and had to pay $3 to bring this person their food because there was no free parking anywhere near their building, and they refused to come out and meet me. They tipped me $1.50 and Uber paid me $2.50. Like, I got approved 3 times the rent for income in 2 weeks, and I can't. And it doesn't matter that I'm working multiple jobs. Doesn't matter that I barely sleep and can barely afford to feed myself. I'm about to be homeless for the 3rd time since May. And it's all because people don't tip their delivery drivers. Like, how hard is it to throw us $5?
Wow. Harrowing. That's what I call that's what I call violence right there. That's violence. That's a corporation making billions of dollars off of his back, his work, and him getting paid like $5 or $6 an hour for it. Now, I'll disagree with him in the sense of, oh yes, personally, if you have the money, I always say tip very well, especially if you're expecting a delivery driver to walk all the way up to your apartment, have to leave their car out there. You're just taking extra time, especially if it took 30, 40 minutes to deliver your meal. Personally, I like to tip very well, but everyone's not in the same economic situation. And so this is what they do. They pit worker against worker, working class against middle class, or working class against the very poor. This is what they do. I understand his frustration. I understand he's angry and upset. But he should be upset at that corporation who's making billions of dollars off his back, and he's not seeing any of those benefits. He should be less angry at the people not tipping, although I think they should tip more, 100%, if they have the means. But right now, with people before the pandemic, a lot of some crazy amount, 70 or 80% of people were living paycheck to paycheck before the pandemic. I mean, we've gone over a year with almost no help from the government. So I understand people only tipping $1.50. That might be all they have. We need to come together and fight back against these corporations, because this is unbelievable. This is inhumane. This is sick. And we cannot let this stand. Let Prop 22 be a lesson. Do not let this be pushed out to the rest of the country. Do not let these gig companies take over the entire country with things like Prop 22, repackaging union jobs, turning them into sub-minimum wage jobs with no protections. Do not let that happen.